Welcome to Orange Cups Podcast, where each episode is full of uplifting stories and insightful conversation. Today we have ManguMami, a self-proclaimed vibe curator. They strive to create multisensory experiences through music. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Can you give us some background on what it was like growing up as a Afro Latin in New York City?
Of course. So, quick history for those that don't know, mango is one of the top dishes for Dominicans. My parents are both Dominican, so hence ManguMami. Being a first generation Dominican American in New York, especially in the 90s, was definitely a very specific and extremely enjoyable experience. Like I said, growing up Dominican American, we always listened to a bunch of like Dominican music, and we grew up on Dominican culture, eating rice and beans every day, mango, Dominican spaghetti, like stuff like that. But also because it's New York and it's already a melting pot, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, where you had everybody from like different cultures living in like the same neighborhood and stuff. We got exposed to like things like dance hall and like Jamaican culture and like Caribbean culture as well, that's outside of Dominican Republic. So it was a very like I said, a specific experience, but at the same time it was enjoyable, and I feel like it's definitely shaped me to who I am in terms of like appreciating other people's cultures when they introduce them to me. So
When did you notice you had a passion for music, and what inspired you to start DJing?
that's such a great question. So, my passion for music came very early on. My dad used to write his own songs, and like he still writes and composes his own songs as well, just for fun. But yeah, like music has always been played like in my house. It's always been a huge part of my life. And I started out young, like, singing in like choirs and like elementary school and stuff, but it wasn't until middle school where I actually picked up an instrument. I started playing the flute, and with practice and just a lot of like a strict regimen, I was able to perform at venues like Jazz at Lincoln Center, City Hall. I played for the mayor before. I've played at jazz clubs that I wasn't even allowed in because I was a teenager. So like I had to bring my mom, like very much like that. So like music. My first exposure to music was in middle school. Throughout high school, I played a variety of saxophones. I did jazz band, marching band, all the bands, all city bands, every single band. And my passion of DJing actually came in my adult life just because I was missing that outlet to create, and I missed it so much. But I was like, I need to think of an instrument that's like portable, it's quiet, I don't want to be too loud with the neighbors and stuff, and saxophones are very loud. So I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I definitely don't want to pick it up again. So I figured DJing would be fun because I could just plug it in and play. So here we are.
During the pandemic is when you started to put DJing into real life motion. How did that happen?
Yes. So, our wonderful president decided to bless us all with stimmies, and I definitely used my stimmy to purchase my first controller. It was like this
Okay.
dingy, like basic entry level Pioneer controller. Some with a
Hey.
couple buttons where I could just, I could get a little foundation, and so, yeah, I tried that out. It only lasted me like a couple weeks because of my laptop. My laptop was extremely old and would freeze all the time. So I was just like, "F this, man! I'm gonna try this again, some other time." And so it wasn't until last June where I picked it up again after getting my heart broken in typical gay fashion. Definitely got my heart broken, and by someone that I thought, I mean, yeah, we're gonna be together forever. Didn't happen. So yeah, I used that as a way to like get over the heartbreak, and here we are. So really have to thank them for that. Thank you.
Did you notice any patterns in your mood during the pandemic that might have been red flags? How did you realize that your mental health was starting to affect your everyday activities?
Oh, for sure. So like obviously being isolated from the outside world, it played a huge part in my mental health. At the time I was living in Queens in the city, like right by Bushwick, and so I would be outside all the time. And so like the fact that I wasn't able to be outside, it really messed me up because for a lot
Yeah.
of people like we rely on nightlife to like escape from everyday day-to-day life, and so
Yeah.
I'm definitely victim of that, and I love to go outside when I just wasn't having a good time at work, or if I was having problems in my personal life, whatever. I'd just go outside. I'm gonna go outside. So not being able to go outside and actually like sit in with those thoughts, with those feelings, for sure, like it wasn't easy. I feel like obviously, the pandemic wasn't easy for a lot of people because we never realized that we crave that intimacy of like being with people until we literally had to be isolated. But it definitely impacted my mental health for sure because it was just like I don't have that community anymore. I don't get to see
Yeah.
my friends as often. I just have to see them on a phone, and like we're all hurting and, in pain. So it definitely sucked.
What type of mental health issues were you experiencing or facing?
For sure, anxiety. I am a very anxious person. um, and definitely depression again, just like being away from like the community and just like not having an escape was really hard because then I have to sit in with like being alone and like being to myself and having to work. I did work through the pandemic, thank goodness, but like that was also very it was stressful
Yeah.
for sure. So
Are there any triggers that tend to worsen your mental health, and how do you manage them?
money. Money. Living in New York and the cost of living in New York just increases by every day. I swear, like I could literally put like my big toe outside the door to like pick up mail and I spent money somehow. I don't understand how. And so that definitely plays with my mental health and just like, oh, if I don't feel financially sustained, I'm gonna end up in the streets. And if I end up in the streets, like what do I do there? What do I like that's just always playing in my mind whenever I have to think about money and like even like when you get like those unexpected charges and you see it on your phone and you're just like, I did not authorize it. So like seeing those, like that's a huge trigger for me, for instance, because I'm just like, oh, do I even have enough money in the like da, da, da. So like that as a result of that, that's also why I'm very much a workaholic. I have a full-time job,
Okay.
a part-time job, and I DJ. So it's like that's kind of like that's a big one for me for sure.
How do you manage all jobs and know when your body's telling you that you're over working and your brain and your mental health is on overload?
This is something that I am navigating and I'm learning to accept. Just because, like, with how I was raised, my mom raised me a very strong-willed person. She was always working and going to school and doing this and
Mm-hmm.
that, and so, like, having that exposure to like that kind of influence allowed me to kind of also emulate her.
Yeah.
But also I don't want to stay in those like generational curses, and I feel like that's also one. So when I notice like it's just getting too much for me, or like if I physically just can't do it anymore, like I'll slam the laptop shut. Like I can't. And so yeah, it's something that I'm starting to learn more as an adult now, and like trying to like balance my work and life, just because let's face it, we're not getting any younger. We're not, and we're not taking the money and the material with us when we leave, when we depart the earth. And so we're taking the memories with us. And so putting that into perspective and also dealing with losses recently like allowed me to realize like sometimes it's really not worth working all that hard. Like you need to like focus on yourself and like focus on the memories that you make. So that's kind of also allowed me to give me that perspective too.
When you talk about suffering and fighting anxiety and depression, thoughts, can you explain what takes you into dark places? What makes you feel like you didn't belong?
Totally. I think growing up, was one of the things that like still resonates to me as an adult. You know, I've always been plus size. I've always dressed androgynously because of the access of clothes or the lack of access of clothes I had as a kid. I've
Mm-hmm.
always dressed more like masculine and more androgynously, and so like I would get bullied a lot. And so that's that happened a lot as a kid. You know, once you start gunning into love and like relationships and things like that, I have always been told that like I'm not capable of being loved and things like that. And so like that always resonates with me like in times when I'm maybe pursuing somebody like dating wise, or just like when it comes to even things like DJing, sometimes I feel like okay, maybe I'm not that good, or like maybe I'm just because like I've always been told that like, oh, I'm okay, I'm decent, but like I'm not like incredible. So like that always comes like in the back of my mind. I'm like, does this sound good?
Right.
Y'all like it? Okay, okay. And so that eventually harbors into like my depression and anxiety and just like over analyzing and second guessing myself a bunch. just so, so yeah, my past for sure.
Do you have a support system in place for the times when you need to talk or get help?
For sure. I'm very grateful for my chosen family. Um, the thing about me is like, you know, being an Aquarius, we're very loyal. And so a lot of my friends I've known for like years, decades. Like we have literally we've seen each other's ups, we've seen each other's downs. So for sure, my chosen family is just incredible. When it comes to support, and you know, I'm always supporting them. I'm their number one cheerleader. You know, they know that they could tell me something as small as like, oh, like I got a like a $5 raise at work, and I'm doing cartwheels and I'm outside your door with a bottle of liquor because we're celebrating. Like it's $5, okay? So yeah, for sure them. My partner is extremely supportive. Shout out to Platano
Okay.
Papi. Um, they are just the kindest and the most patient with me. And so you know, like growing up, I've always been the type of person like I could do it by myself. I don't need anybody. And so like that hyper independency was just a result of being let down by people that overpromised. And so like I'm starting to navigate that. I'm starting to navigate like, you know, like taking down those walls and like being more vulnerable and more softer. And so they have just been incredibly supportive and have just allowed me to like be more vulnerable and be more gentler with myself. And so, yeah, them as well.
What made you pull yourself out of a dark place and how did you start your healing?
That is such a good question. What helped me pull myself out was I think just wanting more for myself. Going back to like us not getting any younger and like taking the memories with us.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that like shadow work and dark work that I had to do on myself, it was a matter of analyzing my life from that point, and I'm like, am I actually happy with how my life went if I were to, you know,
Yeah.
depart the earth? And so then like realizing that I was like, no, like I have more purpose than this. I need more for myself. And so I have been working on myself actively, like for real for the last like it's 2024, like 2 or 3 years now, where it also even included just like a period of like just focusing on me, celibacy journeys, like not relying on other people, and just like really like setting the standard for myself. Like, what do I want for myself in a partner, in a job, in this, in that? And so I'm very fortunate to say that, like, because of that journey and like actually taking the time and doing the work on myself, I've been fortunate to manifest so many wonderful things, including my job, my partner, my DJing, and like how DJing has been taking off for ManguMami. So yeah, you just gotta do that work. Gotta put in that work, kids.
What are some ways that you promote self care and self compassion as part of a mental health healing journey?
For sure, that's a good question. So, I love being by myself now, and that was something that I always said, "Oh, I like being by myself," but I actually never did, just
Yeah.
because of like the dark thoughts and like being by myself and like what did that mean? But now it's to the point where like I love being by myself. Like I could take myself on self dates. Like I like going by myself, eating by myself, treating myself to like, a drink, a cocktail, or five or seven, whatever, or like, getting myself a cute little bag or something. So like I always want to like treat myself, because again, that's all you have at the end of the day is yourself. So it's like you gotta make sure that you're loving up on you just like you're loving up on everybody else. And as far as self-care goes, that's really how I like to treat myself and show out for myself. One of my top love languages is also acts of services. So like being able to like, I don't know, clean my room and like spruce it up and like make sure it's like aesthetically pleasing to me. Like
Right.
that's also a way I show up for myself too.
Can you see a difference from ManguMami pre-pandemic to the ManguMami that is today?
Oh my god, yes. Oh my god, yes. Okay, so like this is such a fun question. So like ManguMami, like during the pandemic, I definitely had so many ideas, but I just didn't have the technicalities on like how to do it. And
Yeah.
so like I've always strived to like, I want to get the sound right. I got to get the sound right. I got to get the sound right. And so like actually having that regimen and like practicing a ton, like I have a show tonight, and so like I've been up like every morning before work, like for like the last month, trying to practice. So like I practice heavily. And so like allowing that regimen of like, okay, I gotta practice after work, I gotta practice, like things like that. And so like that's really helped me a lot, like improve my skill. I feel like also because I'm practicing my skill and like because I'm getting praised very like highly with everything I have been putting out so far, it's also allowed me to be more confident in myself. And like if I do mess up, okay, now I know how to fix it. Now I know I could put this FX here. Boom, 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 boom. So like yeah, that's kind of been like the major changes I've seen with ManguMami. It's funny, like everybody like ManguMami is basically a voice in my head that just like hit this button right now. Like that's the best way to describe ManguMami. And so like I feel like the voice in my head has just been more confident to now make me more confident. So yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you feel like ManguMami has made you more outgoing and outspoken for yourself?
That's a good question. Yes and no. I feel like I've always been outspoken, and I
Okay.
feel like if you truly know me, I always got something to say. Like I always have something to say, and
Okay.
obviously I'm very loud. So that's just naturally how it's been. But I feel like with ManguMami, it's kind of allowed me to have more fun and appreciate nightlife more in a fun way, and less of like a work way. So like
Mhm.
I in terms of like my job and my career and stuff, I've had a background in like nightlife and concerts and like ticketing and like things like that. So like it can get very worky sometimes when you have to go to like parties, or like if you get guest listed somewhere, like it feels like work. And so like ManguMami has just made it more fun to like make nightlife more fun for me. But yeah, no, I've always been loud, and so Mango Mommy's just making me louder, if anything.
Hey, that's right, loud and proud.
Exactly.
I know you consider yourself non-binary. At what age of your life did you come to terms with non-conforming to traditional gender roles?
That is such a good question. So I feel like also this going back to like my experience, live being Afro Latin in New York.
Hmm.
I feel like I was introduced to gender roles and like the destruction of gender roles very early. My mom is a seamstress, and at the time she was also heavier, and so she would wear a lot of like androgynous type of clothing, and so like I've always been exposed to that. um growing up as a kid, like my brother and I, we used to watch X-Men all the time, and I always felt like I was an X-Men. Like I didn't feel like a human. I felt like a mutant. And so like
Okay.
it wasn't until like I grew up and I started realizing these things, I was like, I felt like I've been trans this whole time. Like,
Okay.
I've never felt like a human. I've never felt like cis. I've never felt like a girl. I never felt like a boy. I just felt this other. And so it wasn't until like my 20s when phrases like gender fluidity and gender nonconforming and non-binary started popularizing itself a little bit more, that I was like, I think that's me. I think that's me because like I just don't feel like a girl, but I definitely don't feel like a guy either. I just
Right.
am. So yeah,
What are some ways that society can become more inclusive of non-binary individuals?
totally. That's such a wonderful question. I feel like the easiest way is definitely with language. I feel like especially like the English language is a lot more inclusive than Spanish, which tends to be a lot heavily gendered.
Yeah.
So trying to be more inclusive with the language and not assume that everybody is a he or she. With that, a lot of people think that non-binary folks are supposed to be androgynous all the time. And the thing with non-binary folks is that we don't owe anybody androgyny. It's how we want to express ourselves. So I think opening your mind a bit more and just being more accepting of people, how they come and how they present themselves. They're not always going to present themselves as something more feminine or something more masculine or both or neither. So it's like you just need to be accepting of people and just have an open mind and just know that like not everybody's a girl or a boy. So that's usually how I navigate life. I try not to
Mhm.
like assume someone's gender. Like if I see someone in the street and like I don't know, I like their shoes, I'm like, oh, they have really cool shoes, because I just don't know, just like they don't know about me. So it's like, you know don't want to treat them how I'm getting treated. So
How can we better understand and respect different gender identities outside of the traditional binary?
that is such a good question. There are so many great resources online that give you more context of non-binary folks and how they like to be treated as such. I mean, here's the thing, like a lot of people think that non-binary is like this hip trendy thing that's been going on, and it's like these millennials and Gen Z and blah blah blah. But like non-binary people have existed since like the prehistoric times, like for a minute. And so like a lot of cultures as well, like they have that verbiage of non-binary people but like have never been taught that. So I feel like also just proper education, whether it's online, whether it's in schools, or just in your regular like LGBTQ history, I feel like non-binary folks should be included more because, well, I mean, we're here, we've always been here, it's just we've never had that like that popularity, or like like that, like it's just not as out there or prevalent as like someone who is a gay cis man or like a lesbian cis woman. um so I feel like, yeah, just like having the proper resources and also just proper education.
At what stage of a person's life do you feel it's okay to have that conversation? Like if you had a kid, at what stage would it be okay to start bringing that topic up?
That is such a good question. Here's the thing. I feel like kids nowadays, they could catch on to concepts like gender pretty quickly. I for one, I don't have kids.
Yeah.
The only child I have is a nephew. My god sister has a baby. But I think that there are ways to introduce the idea of not everybody is the same. And I think the earlier, or at least the earlier that you expose them, the earlier they'll be more accepting. Because here's the thing, like these kids are about to be the future, right? And it's like the world's already in shambles right now when it comes to like trans people, when it comes to queer people, when it comes to all of that. And it's like we're essentially leaving the world to them. So it's like, do you want everything to continue to go to shit? No. So I feel like exposing them earlier on is something that would be helpful for the livelihood of queer people. However, um when it comes to like actually transitioning and things, I feel like that's something that would require, I feel like, more maturity,
Yeah.
but that's not to say that you shouldn't expose them earlier on. I feel like when it comes to like if they want to transition themselves, I feel like that should take a little bit more maturity. So maybe not like 4 years old, but like, maybe a little older, just because like there are some after effects to transitioning, and
Yeah.
you just want to make sure that you're on the right path. And so yeah.
You want to make sure that your decision is final because it's hard to reverse medication
Yeah,
sometimes. So,
yeah, and that's the thing, like it is reversible, but again, you just want to be extra sure like this is something that like it
yeah.
feels right.
How can we educate others about the importance of respecting people's chosen pronouns?
That's a good question. So me personally, like I said, being outspoken,
Yeah.
I definitely correct people when they're using the incorrect pronouns for me. Um Sometimes like I'm not gonna be rude about it. Like I'll probably just put you to the side and be like, hey, like my pronouns are they them, etc. etc. Um but I think like just educating the people on like why it's wrong and like why you shouldn't do that is the best way to go about it. It's obviously harder, and I feel like it's a more personal choice with every person um, to do that, because obviously, like, not a lot of people want to have to deal with the consequences, or maybe they're trying to be stealth
Yeah.
or whatever the case is. And so I feel like it definitely differentiates per person. But for me personally, I don't have problems calling people out. I actually just got a tattoo. Let's not tell my mom. And my tattoo is my pronouns. So sometimes if I got a point, I'm a point. But they them. Okay, so yeah.
Okay. As a non binary DJ and a person who has experienced mental health battles, what would be your message to anyone who might be fighting silent battles?
That's a good one. If you are fighting silent battles, first of all, you're not alone. Like it's so cliche, but like you're not alone. And also like I definitely encourage anybody that is fighting silent battles to either find somebody that like you can pour your heart out to, someone that won't cast judgment on you. And if you don't have that, you can hit me up. My socials, I'm sure you're gonna have my social somewhere. I am glued to my phone, but the last thing that I would ever want anybody in this world to feel like is like they're alone, and like when they're at that point of no control where it's just like I feel like ending it all. I would have rather you hit me up as a stranger and help me and let me talk you through it versus the loss. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's so unfortunate, and like you see this happening day in and day out, and like you feel that regret almost like when somebody passes away by means of suicide or like overdosing or things like that. It's like, damn, like had this person actually come to somebody like me, I would have been able to help them. So it's like, no, like literally hit me up. My phone is like stuck to my hand. It's not stuck to my hand right now because we're here, but it's like
Yeah.
right next to me. And so I definitely encourage people to like hit me up about things like that, just because like I've been through it. And so like I would hate for anybody to have to deal with that, for sure.
What type of footprints would you want to leave behind?
Ooh, I like that one. I think the footprints that I would like to leave behind is to tell other folks, specifically queer folks, specifically Latin, Afro Latin folks, and gender nonconforming Latin people, that it is okay to not be okay, one, and it is okay to not be the normal. And here's how you can do both of those things, whether it's with music or your brand, or maybe you want to get into something else like sports, or like you can do what you want to do, and what's meant for you will simply find you, in terms of opportunities, in terms of hobbies, whatever. So just keep going, and like you'll find whatever it is, your end goal, whatever it is, you're gonna find it. So weird kids can be weird and still be successful. So keep going.
Can you speak on how that transition is for you, knowing that you had this thought in your head and it's like now at this point in your life becoming real life motion and it's just like hitting?
It's crazy. I suffer from really bad imposter syndrome because I'll just be like, that's me. That's really me. Like y'all really like me. It's something that I'm navigating for sure. I it had to be like a couple of weeks ago. I went to a party, and one of my like DJ heroes. I'm a huge Dos Flacos fan. Shout out to Dos Flacos. I play their edits all the time in my sets, and one of the Dos Flacos guys was like, "Oh, ManguMami's here," and I was just like, "What the hell? Like, no, like this is
Yeah.
crazy." So like, it's still surreal to me, and like getting booked for all these parties that like I've been a fan of, and I'm like, "Oh, I like you guys. Like, I think it's really cool." And like now it's like I'm DJing now. I'm like, this is very weird, but like okay. So yeah, it's been a fun journey, I will say. I'm starting to get a better hang of like the business side of
Okay.
DJing, and like like angling making my brand this way, so then that way when people see the color purple, for instance, they're gonna think of me, like things like that, like. So yeah, it's been really fun navigating it, I will say. Yeah.
What would be your message to your younger self?
Oh my gosh, this is so funny. I was actually talking to my partner about this the other day. We were like, what's something that you would tell like your younger self about like just nowadays? And I think I would have told my younger self that you are gay. Like it's okay. I feel like it would definitely like solve like 99% of my problems if I just sat my younger self down and was like, you're gay, you're depressed, you're fat, deal with it. And we would have been fine, I feel. I don't know. I mean, I'm fine right now, but like,
Yeah. I think you would build more confidence in your younger self to help you navigate through those challenging times a little more smoothly. Um,
for sure.
if you can change something about your mental health, what would it be?
I'm gonna be honest with you, Nemo. I wouldn't change a thing about it. Like, yes, I'm a depressed and anxious bitch, but like, it's what made me me. So
Right.
I feel like at the end of the day, I'm also a person that doesn't live with many regrets. I don't like to live with regrets. I feel like things have purpose in your life,
Yeah.
and certain events and certain adversities are really just opportunities and blessings in disguise. And so for me, I feel like mental health, especially with how bad my depression or anxiety gets, like it's a reminder to me that I'm human, and like I'm gonna have bad days. We all have bad days, but I have been able to get myself out of those bad days and have created magic, have made music as a result of my depression, have done this as a result of my depression, my anxiety. So it's like I wouldn't change a thing about it. It's made me stronger. So
I love that.
yeah.
Uh, so, can you tell the world what's up next for Mangu Mami?
What's up next for ManguMami? Well, tonight I have a show. It's called Jefatona. Shout out to Jefatona. It is a Caribbean and reggaeton party for women, and I'm so excited because even though I am non-binary, having that experience with ladies and like being in parties where like guys would be creeping up on you and like spiking your drinks and stuff, like it can get really uncomfortable. And
Right.
so being on a platform like that has just been incredible, just because I'm someone that like when I reach out to these parties, I like to reach out with them because they have some sort of brand or vision that I'm aligned with. And so that was one of the things that I loved about Jefatona. So I'm really excited to be DJing with them. Pride's around the corner, so you already know I'm about to be I'll be sweating. I'll be sweating. Pride. This will also the end of Pride will be my first year as a DJ.
Okay, congratulations.
Completed. Thank you. So that's my Manguversary. I'm so excited. And yeah, I'm just gonna be dropping some mixes. I really want to get into production. I want to produce my
Okay.
own stuff and like edit my own things instead of like using other DJs stuff. Trust me, they're great, but like, sometimes
Yeah.
when you can add that little thing to it to like heighten the experience. Um so I definitely want to get into production, but yeah, for now I'm just like trying to make a name for myself. It's definitely hard here in New York because everybody's a DJ at this point, so like it's harder. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to right now.
I want to thank you for your DJ services and thank you,
Appreciate
Mangu
it.
Mommy, for coming on Orange Cups podcast,
Thank
being
you so much for
open.
having me. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. This is such a great platform, and I appreciate you being able to like showcase people's stories and like how do they go through things. So it really does mean a lot. Thank you, Nemo, for having me.